like to start off with your name, your age, where you live, and what's it like.
And what's the last one?
What's it like living where you live right now? So your name, your age, where you live, and what's it like.
Faith Gemmill. I'm 45, and I live in Arctic Village. Um, I love living in our community. I was raised here most of my life, and just being with my own people is what I really love the most. I've lived in cities away from the community, and living in the city, you don't hear your own language, you don't eat your own traditional food, and so being here, that's what I really missed. So I'm just happy to be back home and live here, spend time with family and all of our people, because we're like a big family.
Awesome. And you spoke about traditional food. So what's one of your favorite traditional foods then? How come?
Caribou. And there's like, we use every part of the caribou, but for me, my favorite part is just fried meat and marrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, marrow and fat with meat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds good. We're gonna start off with like some easy, simple questions. One of them is like, what's your favorite childhood memory and why?
My favorite childhood memory is when I was 11. The whole community moved up to the mountain for hunting. Well, actually, the hunters were getting ready in the community, and the caribou was coming, and everybody was just excited, and people were getting gas, getting everything ready, their food. All the hunters and me and my cousin Lorraine, we were excited. We knew everybody's going to move to the mountain, but we wanted to go up there with the hunters. So we were going to different hunters and begging them to let us go with the hunters. And they were all saying, no, 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 because we're young women. And we asked our uncles, we asked just almost all of them. And then finally we asked her dad, and we begged him, and we were like, please, please. And we said, well, listen, you guys, we won't make noise. And so finally they said, okay. They let us come with them. And we went up on the mountain. There's a rock on this side. And they took us there, and we were on the south side of it. And it was pretty late by the time we got up there. And the caribou was moving towards us. And we sat up, the hunters, they cooked and made tea, coffee, sat around the fire. They were telling stories, laughing, joking. And we sat with them and listened to their stories. And then we were playing cards. And every once in a while we'd go up on the hill and look, and we'd see the caribou coming. There was thousands coming. And they were just like little ants moving. And the hunter said they're going to be here about 7 in the morning. So some of them went to sleep, some stayed up all night. Me and my cousin decided to stay up all night. We were too excited. And like Alo, he was there. And he slept on the hill with his sleeping bag. And everybody was going to sleep, but a few of us stayed up and were drinking coffee, playing cards, talking. And then we looked up, and there was the bull about 7 in the morning. A big bull came up, and then they all started coming. And when we got up on the hill, there was thousands and thousands of caribou as far as you could see. And the bull started moving towards Alo. He was sleeping on the hill. So me and Lorraine ran up to him. We were like, get up, it's coming, it's coming. He didn't believe us. He was like, get out of here. We said, it's coming. And then finally he jumped up real fast, and they had a plan, and they carried out their hunting plan, and they got, I think, like 40. and that was enough for the whole village. So then the whole village, all the families moved to the bottom of the mountain in different family camps. And we all stayed up there and dried meat. And just, it was like the whole village was there. And we even put the volleyball net up there, and the teenagers were all playing volleyball at night. It was a lot of fun. But I'll never see that again in my lifetime, I don't think, because that was the first time the herd broke in that such a big group together. It was 50,000 caribou. Yeah. And I'll never see that again, probably. So I was really lucky.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I carry that with me all the time. That picture.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really amazing. Another question is, what is one thing you're proud of, and why?
I'm proud of the work I've done for our people. I'm proud of my people. My people are very strong, and politically they've been very strategic. They've learned how to defend our land using a system that's foreign to us, and we still do it in our own way, like using our own traditional values, prayer, ceremony, spiritual foundation, and we have the most amazing leaders. I've been privileged to spend time with the most amazing Gwich'in leaders, and a lot of them are gone. They've moved, they've passed on, but they've all left something for all of us, and I'm just proud of how we've defended that area so long. Everyone in the lower 48, when we were traveling around speaking about the refuge, they would always say, you're just a tiny little tribe. You have all the big multinational oil companies working against you. You have the U.S. government working against you. There's no way you're ever going to win. They'd always say that, and I'd always say, yes, we're going to win.
Yeah.
We're going to win because we have something that they don't have. And there's a power that's more powerful than man. And that's what we have. And I've seen it. I've seen miracles happen in this fight. And I know that the Creator's behind us and with us. And we're doing what we're supposed to do. Take care of that herd and take care of that place. And we've taught a lot of people about that. A lot of environmental struggles looked at our struggle as it inspired them. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really great. How does the future, for you, how does the future look like in the Arctic?
In the Arctic?
Yeah. Or in the Arctic Circle?
Well, with climate change, it's hard to see very far into the future. If we don't change what we're doing as humanity, if we don't change what we're doing to the earth, then it doesn't look very good. It's going to be, we're going to be adapting and surviving. But we're going to survive, especially the people that live close to the land and know how to use the land. They're going to survive. Others are going to suffer if the worst impacts of climate change happen. But if we do change what we're doing, there could be a whole new renewal of the earth and life. And humanity would change because we have to. And we would rebuild everything in a new way, in a clean way. So there's two different visions that I see, and I just don't know. Right now, I just don't know which it is.
Yeah.
But I know for our people, we're still going to be here. Yeah. So trying to teach our young people how to live from the land, that's our priority. Yeah. So they have all the knowledge they need to survive.
And it's also like traditionally, you have to pass all your knowledge from generation to generation.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive. And following with that, how have you seen that climate change has changed your community or your way of living? How's that impacted?
Yeah, there's changes in our community, especially with hunters. They have to be careful in the winter where they go on the ice, because the ice sometimes is not frozen all the way, and they could actually lose their life. So it's caused them to change their routes that they use for hunting. We've seen animals that shouldn't even be on our land come to our land, like polar bears. There's changes in the permafrost. The permafrost is melting. We had an old cellar downtown where people used to store their meat, and it was dug underground, and the permafrost froze the food, and that's where people used to store their meat long ago, and there's no more permafrost there. It's melted. Some years the berries are bad. I mean, we don't get berries if we get a cold freeze in the middle of summer. It'll cause the berries to drop early, and then we won't get berries that year. But some years it's really good because we'll have just so much sun that we'll have lots of berries. And every year is different. There was a lake where like 2,000 fish died because the lake was evaporating and there was no oxygen for the fish. And if you fly over the Yukon Flats, I've been flying back and forth to the city from our village, and all my life and in the past when we were young, all the lakes were there. It's just lakes on the flats. But now when you look down, it's a lot of empty. There's only half the lake left. There's a lot of dry land, and that's global warming. Because the permafrost is like a frozen bowl under the water. It's ice. And if that's melting, that bowl is gone, and that tundra under there is just soaking the water up like a sponge. So our lakes are disappearing. And that's a big change. Yeah. And then like the story I told last night about the caribou. And this year we had the same kind of winter. We had heavy snows, and then it rained. And when it rains, it causes the top of the snow to turn like ice, like a layer of ice on top of the snow. And the caribou can't forage, and they can't move. I mean, they can't move as fast. So like they're breaking that snow to walk, and they're on their migration, so it slows them down. So around here, we were still seeing caribou in June, May and June. I still saw a few stragglers in June, and that made me worry because if we're still seeing caribou around here, that means it might mean that the females didn't all make it up to the calving grounds in time. So we might have we'll know this fall about the numbers of the herd, and we'll know if that made a difference, if it affected them. Those are the big changes. Oh, and animal behavior too, and sicknesses. Some years there's sicknesses, and then it affects the whole food chain. This is a whole system, interdependent, And so if one, like the ground squirrels, were impacted that one year, it affected the bears. The bears affected the human, you know?
Mhm.
That's how it is up here. Everything's interdependent.
Yeah.
So if one species or even plant or anything is affected, it affects everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything has to be set like very carefully. If one of them is
balance.
taken out, everything else is
Yeah.
affected. Not in a very good way. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the changes.
Yeah. And I know that besides caribou, you also hunt sheep. Am I right?
Sheep
Sheep.
and moose,
Yeah.
ducks, geese, rabbits, muskrat, beaver, porcupine. Yeah.
And so, yesterday we were talking. We were hearing their presentations, and they were talking about how outsiders, like outside hunters, will come and they hunt the sheep. How do you feel about that? Like, how do you?
I don't think it's good because they compete with us and they'll take more sheep than they need, and they're only doing it for trophy. They're not doing it because they need to eat. It's not for their food, and the meat goes to waste. They don't stop here and give us the meat. I don't know what they do with the meat, but I don't think they eat it. All I've heard is they just take the heads and mount it up on their wall. And I've heard horror stories about the spike camps up in the refuge of outside hunters. One of them was, they said there was hunters that were illegally trying to hunt our bears. And we have like mountain bears, grizzly bears. And what they were doing was like killing a sheep or a caribou or a moose. And they were putting the blood all around the camp so that the bears would smell the blood and the bears would come in and they would kill the bears. And we don't, when we hunt, we keep our land clean.
Yeah.
We don't you try to not let the blood go on the ground. Try to keep it as clean as possible. And that's our old teachings. And for them to do that was, and just to kill a bear just for the bladder, you know, or just for the trophy, we don't do that. We don't take no animal for nothing. We use every part of it, of what we take, and we take what we need. And those are the stories I heard about the spike camps up in the refuge. And I don't want hunters like that. They have no ethics. They don't have respect for the animals, and we're taught to respect the animals. I would rather have if they're gonna hunt on our land, and it's still our land traditionally, that's our ancestral land. And if they're gonna hunt on our land, they should have guides from our community. And we should be able to take them out there and show them the right way to do it. And the meat could come back to the people. And plus that, we'd make sure that they don't take more than they, we would make sure that the animals, the numbers are good.
Yeah, because that's like too many hunters coming and hunting. It's also causing the population to decrease.
Yes, and that's what's happening with moose all over the state. Yeah, and now down, like a lot of tribes, a lot of Athabascan tribes, they have potlatch moose, and even that is being challenged now by the state because of the numbers. And it's not the native people that are doing it, but we're being blamed. Yeah, and then they're putting restrictions on native people, not just for moose, but even fish. The fish is being overtaken too. Salmon, and a lot of the native people, some tribes have had, because the numbers were low, some tribes had to do a moratorium on themselves to stop fishing. And that's their culture. They have to have fish to survive the winter. And because they cared so much about the numbers, they put their own moratorium in place. Athabascan tribes did. And the numbers went back up, and then they fished again.
So you always let like the population to first reproduce before going out and hunting
Yeah.
again. That's
Yeah.
impressive. That's pretty
So a lot of native people in Alaska are like that. We have respect
cool.
for the game, for animals, and we don't want them to be mistreated, yeah, disrespected.
Yeah, because it's your culture. It's you
Yeah,
have that connection, like you were saying before.
yeah.
1 second, can
Yeah.
you saw your aunt,
Yeah.
Jess, she said she'll pick you up for the plane.
Okay.
Oh, is she here right now? What time?
Kristen
you-
will pick you up.
Can you call and see what time the
Yeah.
plane's coming? Yeah. Well, let's speed this up, huh?
Yeah. Sorry, we have a couple more questions. How long do we have?
I'm not sure, they're gonna call and see.
Okay. Okay. So oh, there's this one. How did you feel about Congress wanting to open the coastal plains for drilling in 1988? Were you?
I was 15, and at that time I was excited because we were seeing all of our people come over here from Canada, and all our chiefs, all of our elders. That was the first time I saw such a big meeting and so
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
And but back then I was so young. I thought my leaders, they're so strong. I thought they're gonna handle it.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it. They'll take care of it, and they'll protect it. That's what I thought. But it's been 40-year struggle. But we did still protect it. Yeah, that's what I was happy that our people came together and decided to speak with one voice for the caribou.
That's nice. Another question I had is, what's your best advice for the younger generation? Like, what would you tell them about this community, about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge or the Arctic Circle? What's going on? Like,
Any youth, any young
anyone,
people?
whoever does, especially those who don't know about this area, and those who want to learn, or those who already know about it but want to keep learning about it. Like, what would you tell them?
My advice to any young person would be to learn about these issues, learn about climate change, make their own decision about it, and if they believe that it's impacting and it's going to impact them, they should stand up and speak up and start fighting. Start fighting for their future, because the young people are the ones that are going to be the most impacted.
Yeah.
It's the future. It's you all's future, you know? And so you all need to build a movement and just overcome the politics. And it can be done. It just needs a movement built. And it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's happening. And I see it happening.
Thank you. But especially for us that we're younger generation
Yeah,
as
and
well.
don't
the
give up hope.
incoming.
Don't give
Yeah.
up hope. Because that will keep you going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're keeping.
Yeah.
That's what keeps you going. Do you want to ask a couple questions? There's like 3 left. Yeah. There's 3 left. Do you want me to take them?
How important is the porcupine caribou herd to you and your community?
The porcupine caribou herd is very important. It's in our creation story, it said that humans were animals at the time of creation. The animals had human characteristics. They used to talk. And there was a decision to create humans. So we split from the animals. In our story, it says that the Gwich'in came from the caribou. And when we came from the caribou, there was an agreement between us and the caribou that the caribou from that time on would always retain a part of the Gwich'in heart, and the Gwich'in would always retain a part of the caribou heart forever. So we're a part of each other. Yeah. And so caribou has provided our people with everything we need to live. Our housing, our clothing, our tools, our food, our medicine, our spirituality, our economic base. Like, it's central to our culture. Provides for everyone. And then we in turn take care of the herd. We make sure that people respect the herd. We tried our best to protect the calving grounds.
I think just one more question we have for you. What is your opinion in regards to the coastal plain, or better known as the 1002 area?
The coastal plain, to me, it's a sacred place. We call it Ijikwatsangundaigotlit, the sacred place where life begins. And it really is a sacred place to our people. And at that time when animals are renewing, we don't bother them. We let them do that because that's part of our respect. And that place is not just a birthplace for the caribou, it's a denning area for polar bear, nesting area for birds from all around the world. And so it's a sacred place. And humanity needs places like this. We need places like this. And there's not many left. We've taken and taken so much. There's no place like that left that I know of. And that's like for the polar bear, that's one of the most important on-land denning areas. And so I really worry about the polar bears too, and the caribou. If the oil companies go in there, they displace all of the polar bears and the caribou, where are they going to go? To den or to nest or to birth their young. So there's a lot at stake. Yeah. So I fought since '88. I've been speaking up for it and fighting for the refuge. And I believe that we're on the right path, my people. We just gotta keep doing it. And we gotta do it in a good way. And I believe that what we're doing is helping all people. It's a fight for all people.
I think that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing your
Thank
story,
you.
sharing your view with us. It's very meaningful, very powerful.
Thank you.
So much for giving your time for us.
Actually, as you're packing us, I have a question.
Yeah.
You know, and I know Chad wants to do some photos and stuff like that. One of the things that I'm struggling to understand, well, two things. A, the oil's not, like, guaranteed, right? We have no idea. And they could, if they were to go in and do drilling, they could potentially have it be unsuccessful and not get very much, right?
Yeah.
It's what?
It could potentially be unsuccessful and they
Yeah.
could not get.
They don't know how much oil is left. And the one ASRC, they know, but they've kept it a secret. Why?
And that's the other thing. I don't really understand the difference between the corporations and how the, native corporations work versus, I know you guys have the reservation, so it's not a corporation, but how do the corporations work?
that's a whole big another
I thought
issue.
so, yeah.
But I'll touch on it real quick.
Okay.
In '68 is when Prudhoe Bay was discovered,
Mm-hmm.
and that forced Congress to try to settle land claims in Alaska because they wanted to build the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, and they needed a right-of-way. So they needed to settle land claims, so they created the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act without the input of the Native people up here. And there was a small delegation of leaders that were sent to DC by the people up here. We had one Gwich'in, and we told them, go get our land, get title to our land. They went to DC, they were negotiating with congressional members for title, and Congress told them, they were coerced into signing, told them, no matter what you guys do, you're not gonna get what you want. We created this bill, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. This is the best deal you're gonna get. And they like forced them and to believe that. And they were whining and dining them, and that's real. I have an elder that went there, and he told me
Yeah.
they wined and dined them. They drank liquor with them every night, and they'd negotiate while they were under the influence. And the people, they were Native people, they weren't used to liquor.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't clear-minded, and they were coerced. That's how they were coerced. So they agreed to the act.
Mm-hmm.
And one Native person spoke out, and that was E. Took Edwardson from Barrow. And he said, don't sign it, don't sign it. But the others didn't listen to him. And they all went into the room and they signed it. And E. Took said later, when they walked into that room, they owned 100% of Alaska. When they came out of the room, they owned only 10%.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was a swindle. And what they ended up doing was they created 13 regional corporations. These are the big corporations that have subsurface rights.
Mm-hmm.
And then they created village corporations which have surface rights.
Mm-hmm.
And they totally ignored the tribes. And they gave the land to the corporations. The tribes didn't get nothing.
So those corporations, the 13 big ones, none of them were tribal.
No. They're corporations, like any corporation.
Like a gas
And Congress
company.
created them.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when I talk about angst, I always say it was in a nutshell. One was an act. It was a theft.
Mm-hmm.
It was a theft of our ancestral lands as Native people in Alaska. 2, it was an assimilation act. The purpose was to take us from our ties to the land and assimilate us into Western value systems. So that was where the corporates, we had to learn that.
Right.
And then the 3rd part was an act to divide and conquer us, because you'll have the corporation over here, their only purpose or mandate is profit at all costs. Then you have a tribe over here whose purpose is the health and well-being of the people, and they conflict, and that caused division, and that's been happening when it comes to land issues since the act was passed. And then the final part of which they haven't been able to achieve, but it was their intent,
Yeah.
was termination. They wanted to terminate the tribes in Alaska, and there's been bills that moved forward since then, every 10 years maybe in the state of Alaska, where they try to terminate the tribes on paper and recognize these for-profit Native corporations as tribes, which actually would give sovereignty to corporations.
Okay.
And that's unheard of. That would be like granting BP sovereignty, because tribes are sovereign, and no corporation should ever be granted sovereignty. And so we fought those bills hard, the tribes in Alaska, and we've defeated those bills. But there's pieces here and there in different legislation that did get passed that gives corporations similar status as a tribe.
That's what was confusing.
like HUD,
Yeah.
the HUD bill
Mm-hmm.
way back, and the Native American Self-Determination and Education Act, I think it's something like that. That they're recognized as tribes in that act too. And that should have never happened like that. They should never be recognized as tribes or having sovereignty or having similar status to tribes, because all they are is a business. That's all the corporations
why are.
are.
They called native corporations?
Because that's what they are. They're a corporation.
Yeah.
It's a business.
So their business is owned by native folks?
Themselves. Their shareholders are the owners.
Okay.
And so, like, up on the North Slope, Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, all the Inupiat up there are shareholders of
Okay.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Doyan, that's the interior, all
Right.
the villages that are under Doyan are shareholders, the owners. But they operate like any corporation. They don't
Got it.
listen to their shareholders.
Okay. Totally.
And
okay.
so what ended up happening is our land became the assets of these corporations.
Got it.
And so there was also part of the act that said if these corporations fail to prosper, they can be bought out or sold to a corporation, any corporation.
Oh, wow.
And that was the intent of ANCSA too. They thought Native people up here were so ignorant we wouldn't be able to run a corporation and successfully run it, and they would all fail, and the land would be transferred out of our hands to other corporations like BP, like mining companies, etc. But the Native people hired lawyers and learned how to run the corporations,
Yeah.
and they managed to stop that from happening.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to use their assets
Yeah.
to become successful,
Yeah.
which is the land.
Right.
So it was a trade-off. And so like on the North Slope, there's massive development all across the slope, and
Right.
the corporations are part of that.
Right.
They had no choice. That's
Yeah.
their asset. For them to be successful, they had to sell off their assets.
Got it.
And like on the West Coast, mining
Mm-hmm.
and Southeast Alaska, the timber,
Mm-hmm.
they
Mhm.
clear-cutted all their timber.
Yeah.
And so it was one of the most destructive bills that could ever been passed to Native Americans that I see.
Yeah.
And there was a line in there that said we gave up all Aboriginal rights to the land. So we gave up our rights. And our people, Arctic Village and Vinitai, we opted out of it. We
Mhm.
chose to keep title to our land. But there was a Supreme Court decision that said it still applied to us.
Oh my gosh.
So they took reservation status from us and Indian country status,
Oh my gosh.
because if they granted it to us, they would have had to re-grant it to all the tribes, and it would have set precedent and kind of undone what ANCSA did. So there was no way Alaska would ever let tribes get that status and undo ANCSA, because Alaska is prosperous because of ANCSA. So they took from us, and they said ANCSA applies to you even though you opted out and you don't have Indian country. So now Arctic Village and Vinitai, we just have fee simple title. We own the air, the surface and subsurface, but we don't have rights. But we still practice our rights, and we still recognize our own rights, because our rights are God-given. They're inherent. No one can take it away, and no one can grant it to us. And as long as we still practice it, we're sovereign. And and that's what tribes are still doing.
Yeah.
Even though they're saying we don't have rights up here, we're constantly battling to have our rights recognized.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly we're gaining ground. Like my position here at the tribe is to build our tribal courts,
Mm-hmm.
to govern ourselves, to
Right.
govern our own justice system. So we're taking pieces and showing them like we are sovereign. We still have our rights. We never gave nothing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the young people of Alaska to learn the true history. That's the truth.
Yeah.
They need to learn the truth of what happened, and they need to go back to Congress, because it was an act of Congress. They need to create another act and undo ANCSA. Put the land back to the rightful owners. The tribes will always look out for the health and well-being of the people. That would stop all this psychotic, crazy, insane development in Alaska if we did that. And that was one of the goals of Red Oil. That was one of our main goals. We wanted to educate our own people about ANCSA, Native people throughout the state, so we could challenge ANCSA and set things right again.
Yeah, yeah.
So ANCSA is one of my biggest.
Yeah.
My ride is here. I gotta catch a plane. Yeah.
Alright.
Thank you so
Wow.
much. Thank you so much
That was so.
for your time, for all of your information.
Yeah.
Do you have a few minutes for a couple of shots, or you gotta roll?
I gotta go.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, I can
Have
go
a
like
good flight.
12:30, 1:30.
Alright, let's stop the recording. No, it's still recording.
Okay.
See the little red thing?
Wait.
Okay, where
Yeah,
did this trip
it's-
come from?
Just stop. Press stop now. Put done.
Huh?
Done.
Done.